everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Laura Zentmeyer. I'm a Platinum Executive of ASEA, which is a biotech and research company. I'm also certified as a regenerative health practitioner. Today we are going to be talking about redox signaling molecules, and specifically our focus is going to be on the redox signaling molecules found in this tube of RENU 28. And what are redox signaling molecules? There's something that your body is already making. Your mitochondria make it, making it every single moment of the day. And as you age, you're making less and less and less. And you're making about 10% less every decade that you age beyond puberty. So by the time you're in like your 70s, gosh, you're really depleted of this stuff. And it's so fundamental in the healing process. And that explains why, in general, older people take longer to recover, or they might have more health challenges. And they work in a number of ways. They help your cells communicate better. So they amplify, they clarify signals between and within cells. So your cells are just talking to each other better. Kind of wakes up the inner doctor in your cells and makes them go like, oh, there's something that we should be doing a better job at. And it's going to boost your antioxidants. So glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase go way up, and your immune system is fortified. And what I think is exciting is it turns on genes, got a little chart for this, turns on genes that support your cardiac system, your immune system, your inflammatory system, your digestive system, and your hormone modulation. And some fun statistics that we have for the RENU 28. Let me get on my glasses for this. So they did a 4-week-long study, and the participants experienced these results. So 21% reduction in wrinkle depth, 23% improvement in overall wrinkles, 20% improvement in elasticity, 22% improvement in texture, 23% improvement in smoothness, 16% improvement in cellular renewal, 16% improvement in the appearance of cellulite, 11% improvement in skin moisture, 50% improvement in skin blood flow. Specifically with that study, with the blood flow, and blood flow is so important because that's how you get your oxygen throughout your body. That's how you get your nutrients delivered. And so from one big gob of goo of this RENU 28, the participants' blood flow increased by 49% within the first 15 minutes. And then they looked at it 96 hours later, it improved by 55%. It's incredible, I think. And then the bottom part of this image talks about the cell turnover by age. So when you're young, you're rapidly turning over new cells. And as you get older, it can take a lot longer. So like babies, they rarely get scars because they're turning over those cells so quickly. People who are on the older side of the spectrum, well, it can even take 100 days or more for their cells to turn over. And that's where you get the wrinkles and the sagginess. So let's continue. Here are some fun photos for anti-aging. That was in 4 weeks. Here's a little story about anti-aging that there's Gary. Gary shared with me. Gary is the physicist who figured out how to stabilize the oxidants and reductants and basically create the ASEA. It took him a whole year to do that. But Gary was telling me that he was in the lab and he was just playing around, and he poured some ASEA into these petri dishes of senescent cells. Senescent means old, senile. In the field of cellular biology, it means cells that no longer replicate. So he poured some ASEA into the petri dishes, and a lot of them self-destructed. That is called apoptosis. Basically cellular suicide. Sounds like a morbid concept, but it's a great thing. You want old wonky cells to just kind of go away. And so that's impressive. And by the way, there's a Nobel Prize won for the study of apoptosis in 2016. And what I found was more remarkable was those other cells that didn't self-destruct, that were still like old and wonky, they started replicating again. So this is from a scientific standpoint, it's anti-aging. And so anyway, here are some photos. So 4 weeks for that. Dun, 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 dun. 8 days for that woman. Do, 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 do. 28 days for her wrinkles to get better. This 65-year-old was really happy with her neck. Haha, this is a funny guy. He's a veterinarian. You can see he put it on just half of his face. So you can see one half of his face. For 28 days he did this. The wrinkles went away. You know, on one side you see that, I call it like a marionette line. It's kind of deep there. Not so much over here. That one side of his face, it just looks a little more lifted, a little more plump, more hydrated. The pores are decreased in the size. And then after 28 days, his wife was just like, just put it on your whole face, enough. And then there's this guy. I think this is so funny. He's smiling when his face looks the way it does when he has that health challenge. And then he's kind of frowning 5 days later when he's had this remarkable recovery. It kind of reminds me of my father. This is not my father, but my father, he participated in a little contest that Maureen Hayes was running. Maureen Hayes is a founding member of our medical board, double board certified doctor, and she's always doing fun things. And she's like, let's have a contest. Let's see who can have the best before and after photos with the RENU 28. And so I called up my dad. I'm like, Daddy, you're old and wrinkly. Can you please play with me? Can you do this? So he did it for a month. He won the contest. His face, we got rid of the wrinkles. He looked so much younger. But he was, at the end, he was like, I want my wrinkles back. I look like a phony baloney from Hollywood who's had Botox. I look like a piece of fruit that's all plumped up. And anyway, it works whether you want it to or not. And then here's Masami. A lot of you know my friend Masami. Masami is the reason why I got introduced to this company, because her husband is best friends with my doctor, and she reached out to him and said, Bob, you need this, and all of your patients need it too. So thank you, Masami. Masami's big story was she had a third of her liver removed, felt like she was about to die, and she decided to have a bottle of this every day. And about 4 days later, she felt great, was walking on the beach, decided to stain her back deck. Amazing, amazing woman. And let's show some photos of how the RENU 28 has just helped heal. So this person is from Australia, and in Australia, there's a few holes in that ozone layer, and a lot of people have sun damage. So she had had a chemical treatment in the picture on the left, and it's a little rough to recover from those, but then she got introduced to RENU 28 and also the ASEA. But the RENU 28 really made the big difference for her face, and she had a remarkable recovery. And she was just like, you know what, I have reduced wrinkles. That's an added bonus. I feel 20 years younger than I did. All these other health challenges are gone. Anyway, there you go. There's a picture of a hand. This person was bit by a brown recluse spider. Tried all sorts of things that the traditional medical society had to offer. Didn't work. Did this, and I think it was just 8 days. Let me look at my glasses. Hang on. Yep, 8 days. 8 days to recover from the brown recluse spider. This guy, if you understand Spanish, he said he was dealing with a challenge on his head for many years, and then 19 days of using the RENU 28, it was eliminated. This person got rid of the bump under her eye in 16 days. This is great for scar tissue as well. A lot of you know that when I was first introduced to this product, I had been dealing for 9 years with a skin issue we stay compliant here, so we don't say the names of diseases. But yeah, I would get these spots on me that were big and had irregular borders and had multiple colors to them and were kind of scary. And it was sort of a life-threatening situation. And I would go to the hospital every 3 months and have big chunks of my body removed. For 9 years, I did that. And they had to go deep, they had to go wide because they had to get the margins. And I started this product basically just because I wanted to be a better mom. I wanted to be more present with my kids and be able to play with them better. Didn't know this was going to help all my health challenges. 2 months after I started the product, went in to the hospital thinking it was time for surgery, and they couldn't find anything to biopsy. And I haven't had to deal with that problem since then. That was 2016. And now I go in just once a year for a yearly checkup. I'm never afraid that there's going to be an issue. And it's just fun to have a reunion with the people who used to cut into me. But for the other people who are new, they look at my folder and they're like, where are your scars? Where are your scars? You should be covered head to toe in scars. I challenge anybody to try to find some. So, great for scars. And then here's the amazing Barbara Stoles. Just incredible. Thanks for sharing that photo, Barbara. Okay, and it's not just for the face. Got rid of stretch marks. That's 32 days between those two pictures. 28 days between those two pictures. I don't know what the time lapse for that is, but people love that that photo. It's at the bottom it says photos are unretouched and provided by Dermatest. Dermatest it's one of the largest and most respected dermatological institutions in Europe, and just so you know, they awarded the RENU 28 their coveted 5-star seal of excellence based on safety and based on the effectiveness of the product. And then, so we've talked about just making yourself prettier and some healing, but let's talk about autoimmune disorders. So the traditional way of thinking about autoimmune disorders is when there is a problem with cellular communication. One of the main things that the redox signaling molecules does is it improves cellular communication. So autoimmune issues, I think, are really an easy one. Now people are thinking, gosh, a lot of autoimmune disorders might be related to parasites, because maybe if you got these little microscopic little critters in there, your immune system's like, hey, there's an invader, we got to attack, we got to deal with it. And so maybe it's a parasite issue. Well, oh my gosh, this is great for getting rid of parasites. So no matter what the source of the problem is, it all boils down to just let's repair the cells. And that's what the RENU 28 does. And then here's another autoimmune challenge. And that person, the time lapse between those two photos was 12 days. And this person recovered from his autoimmune problem in 3 weeks. Okay, and I'm gonna let you know the next 6 pictures my husband didn't even want me to include. He's like, oh, I can't look at those. Me, I'm just like, let me get a better look. It's just so interesting. So either close your eyes or put on your glasses, because these are interesting. There's a foot. That's one that my husband really has a hard time looking at. This guy, you can see the diameter of that health challenge is 1 inch, and the depth of it is 1/2 inch, and then all gone. Here's a thumb that got injured from a table saw injury. 21 stitches, took 5 weeks to heal. They found this to be really remarkable because he had a history of taking a long time to heal from surgeries. Here's somebody who had a growth on her face and her back. She's all better. And then there's this, 4 weeks. Okay. If you were covering your eyes, you don't need to anymore. Let's talk about something that teenagers might have where they just, get some irritation with their skin. There's a very happy guy. Here's a very happy girl. Just so you know, when you're dealing with blemishes, sometimes it might get worse before it gets better. And that's because you've got the source of the problem might be like deep within the skin, and this is going to pull it out and it's going to detox. So for maybe 10% of my clients, they get worse before they get better, but then they are really healed and very happy. So there you go. This is a picture of hair growth. I'm giggling because this one frustrates my husband. So to be completely honest and transparent, he doesn't have a whole lot of hair on top of his head. I think that the redox signaling molecules are working on something else in his body. Everybody is different. For my father would always complain because he's like, honey, I have to get another haircut because my hair is growing so quickly from this stuff. And my cousin, I used to say he had like a little yarmulke kind of back here, just this bald area. Full head of hair now. So here's somebody who grew his hair in 8 weeks. Here's another one. Okay, and so our focus has really been on the RENU 28. I'm just going to spend a moment talking about our mask. So our mask is also, it's the redox signaling molecules in a concentrated form, and there is bentonite clay that's added to it. The bentonite clay, bentonite comes from volcanic ash from Montana. It's got a negative charge to it, and it just, it works like a magnet because the icky things in your face kind of have a positive charge and it just pulls it out, and it has the redox signaling molecules in it. So here's a picture of just one application of somebody using the mask, and you can see how the wrinkles are just so decreased. And then it's not just for the face. You can use it on your feet, on your, well, I'm not going to say what those are. Just being compliant here. I'll tell you a story of how this helped my daughter. We were swimming off the coast of Puerto Rico, and she had an encounter with a sea urchin, and we got her back to shore, and the lifeguard was there. He spent a whole hour pulling these sea urchin spines out of her leg, and he basically was telling her, your trip is ruined. And it was the first day that we got there too. And he's like, you are just gonna feel so terrible from all these toxins, and just trying to give us a heads up. Well, I had the RENU 28. That made things remarkably better within minutes. But I thought, oh gosh, if she's got these impurities in her body, let's get the mask. Let's really try to pull those out. And it was an ASEA trip that I had won for the family, and a whole bunch of other ASEA friends were down there. And so I went around to everybody. I'm like, please, 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 do you have the mask? I searched for maybe 2 hours trying to find somebody who had a mask. And then my good friend Donna Lynn was like, oh, sure, honey, here, have this. I go running up to my daughter's hotel room, and I'm like, here, put this on. And she's like, oh, I have some of that in my toiletry kit. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine, use it. And oh my gosh, she had the best vacation. That evening, after doing an application of this, she was able to skip around and dance. It was amazing. Oh, and here's another fun story. Jerry White, my very good friend, put this on just half of his face. People thought that he had had a stroke because the other half was just relatively so saggy. So it's a great product. Okay, let's just talk about animals. There is the eyeball of a Pomeranian who had damaged his cornea, and so they did use some ASEA. You guys, it's all the same stuff. It's just different concentrations. But I just thought I would put that in. So then at first they were just doing drops, but then she thought to put the serum. So got all these redox products. So This is the drink. Heals you from the inside out on a systemic level. Low concentration. It does the job, though. Amazing. This is the topical version. Heals you from the outside in. It's about twice as concentrated as the ASEA, and it just serves a broad spectrum kind of approach. It's going to help everything. Anything that involves cells, this is going to help. We also have this. Redox Gold has 24 karat gold in here. It serves as a catalyst to upregulate the production of glutathione, really important antioxidant. This is for a more targeted approach. We have the mask, as we discussed, and then this is the serum. It's more than twice as concentrated as the gel, so really, really strong stuff. And so this person chose to put the serum in the eye. Within 24 hours, the dog's vision was restored. And then that little mouse on my shoulder is Gordon. This is just a testament of how this is anti-aging, as I spoke about, with Gary's story. And that mouse lived to be, I don't know how old the mouse was when we found it. This is a mouse that I found in the bathroom. It didn't want to leave our house, so we turned it into a pet. And so I don't know how old Gordon was when we found Gordon, but Gordon lived with us for 8 years. If it were 8 years old and the life expectancy of a human is, I don't know, maybe 80 years, it's like a 640-year-old mouse. But RENU 28 story with Gordon had a growth of abnormal cells on his back, and I thought, oh, this is the end of Gordon, but I just did one application of the RENU 28 within a week, completely fine. So there's that. I saved a seagull one time. It looked like it was dead. My husband thought that it was dead, but I saw it blink at me, and I'm like, no, this thing it's alive. And I found it on the beach in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, when we were out for a walk. Brought it back to the hotel, climbed into the bathtub, gave it a little bit of ASEA. So the left picture, I'm just trying to force it into its beak, but then where I look happier, it's because the seagull is drinking it on its own. But what I think really saved the seagull was the RENU 28. So my husband, before we were going to leave the hotel and journey 300 miles back to New Hampshire, and I was planning on taking the seagull with me because I'm like, this needs some special care here. Didn't know it was illegal to transport seagulls across the New Jersey border, but I would have done it anyway. Anyway, my husband delayed our departure by maybe 45 minutes, wanted to have a rest. And so I just sat there and I put the RENU 28 all over this bird's legs because I figured it'll get absorbed really well, It's harder to get through the feathers, so just put it all over the legs so you can kind of see the feet of that bird look a little wet, gooey. It's because of all the RENU 28. And the bird started walking around the hotel room. I still thought I needed to bring it back to New Hampshire with me to give it some more care for at least another week. But we started driving away, and then I was just like, you know what? It's kind of perky. Let's let it, let it out, see what happens. So I'm thinking this is maybe like an hour and a half after we found this nearly dead bird.
Oh my God.
Thank you, RENU 28. Terrible picture of me, but there you go. Just flies. Back to the beach where we found it. Here's a rat that we found. The rat had encountered rat poison because of my husband. But it's okay. I understand. We had this whole discussion. Rats moved into the chicken coop. There were a lot of them. My husband was like, we're putting out rat poison. I'm like, no, I don't want to hurt anything. I don't want to disturb the food chain. And he's just like, forget we're having this conversation. But just to be honest with you, I'm still going to do it. And why don't you just pretend that the rats are relocating and moving over to the neighbor's property? And so I chose to think that the rats went away except for this guy. My daughter found on the floor of the chicken coop. It was paralyzed. Could look at her, though. She didn't like that. She came running in, accused me of being a rat murderer, and demanded that I save this rat's life. The other kid is on the computer and reading how the rat is really doomed because rat poison is designed to poison. And anyway, we brought the rat in. I'm giving it a little bit of ASEA there, but it really recovered, I believe, because of the RENU 28. And I went through 2 tubes of this to save the rat, which is kind of ironic. My husband's trying to kill it. I'm spending $80-something to save it. And anyway, it made a full recovery. And then we released it. I thought it would be fun to have a pet rat, but my husband's like, get that thing out of here. It was very spunky. And what's kind of funny to me is, so I shared this story with my friends at ASEA. They thought I was nuts. And Maureen was like, don't tell anybody. They're just going to think you're crazy. A doctor had made a video. He had a recording of me explaining this, and then a little bit of some footage of this rat. And I did share it. And because of that, we've been able to help so many people. There was a wonderful woman in Texas who called me up and said, that rat saved my dog's life because the dog was almost dead. They spent, I think, about $700 trying to fix the dog at the vet's. That didn't work. She saw the rat video, got inspired, gave the dog the redox. The dog was alive and well. And now I have a new friend. And and then it's funny because now Maureen tells everybody, go look at the rat video, because it's just a testimony of, rats don't know anything about placebos. This stuff works. And then what's really funny to me is that somebody who speaks French redubbed that video in French, and the French version went viral. And so anyway, thank you, RENU 28. And let's see. There's Otto. There's my dog. And he's got a couple of RENU 28 testimonials. One of them is he broke his leg.
This is
I don't know how he did it, but he was on my doorstep and his leg was broken. I picked him up and carried him to the vet.
Okay,
and she was like, "Whoa, this is going to be a complicated surgery, and he needs to have it immediately. It's going to cost between $8,000 and $13,000. And by the way, just be prepared. We're probably going to have to amputate." And I said no, and I brought him home. And it didn't occur to me to give him the drink. I only used the RENU 28 at this point. I was very new with the company at that point, and I don't know how many tubes we went through. A few. And within a month, he was walking just fine. And I brought him back to the vet, and he's jumping around. And I'm like, look. And she said, it's a medical miracle. And I said, the miracle is redox signaling molecules. And she's like, no, nothing helps an animal this much. It's got to be a medical miracle. So we agreed to disagree. And then a year later, he developed stage 4 irregular cells with his spleen and his liver. The vet thought he was going to die in a couple of hours, wanted to put him down, brought him home, gave him more redox. A month later, his blood work was perfect. And then another RENU 28 story with him is when he was really old, he would get some seizures every now and then. And as soon as he would start having the seizure, I would just take a giant glob of the gel, and I'd just rub it all over his nose and his muzzle. It would stop the seizure within seconds. So that's my dog story with RENU 28. And now I think I'll just share a few powerful testimonials about the RENU 28. One of them, this really is not that wow of a story, but I like it because it changed the mindset of my husband. So he knew that this was good stuff. I mean, I no longer had those abnormal cells that I was dealing with for 9 years. My allergies were gone within a month of having this product. I didn't need to take my thyroid medication that I'd been taking for 29 years. Lots of good testimonials. My knees didn't hurt anymore. I had 5 knee surgeries. They're good now. But he didn't have his own experience until one day he was mowing the lawn and he ran over a hornet's nest, and all these hornets were attacking him. And I looked outside. I didn't know what was going on. He was running around. He reminded me of like one of the Three Stooges, just running around, waving his arms, comes in frantically and is like, quick, I need medicine. I'm stung by the hives, just everywhere, all over his body. And I gave him this. And he's like, no, I need real medicine. And I'm like, I get half your body. And I put this on half of his body. He used some steroid garbage from the medicine cabinet. We no longer have a medicine cabinet now. We only have a redox cabinet. But he used something else on the other half of his body. And then about 15 minutes later, he's like, quick, I want this everywhere. So we did. And that night, there was no trace of any hives on him. So that was kind of like an epiphany for him. Here's another story. This is not a story from one of my clients, but a friend was sharing it with me. There was a boy who had been in a coma for about a month, and it was due to a tick-borne illness, and they were getting ready to take the life support off. And they really thought that this might be the kid's last day. And somebody had given the family a tube of the RENU 28. And so they asked the doctor, they're like, somebody gave us this, can we use this? And the doctor said no. He said, it's not going to help. The doctor left the room, they opened it, they started covering the boy's abdomen all over the belly. That's a really good place to put the RENU 28 when you have a medical emergency, because you have all these capillaries down there. So much blood flow is happening there. So it gets absorbed really well, and the molecules get distributed throughout the body wherever they need to go. So they gooped up the kid's belly. Later that afternoon, the kid wakes up out of his coma, and he asks his mom for a hamburger. So there's a RENU 28 testimonial for you. Another one is there was a woman that I was connected with who was dealing with hospice, and the doctor said she had 2 hours to live. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be my first person that I'm ever going to lose. I just didn't get to her in time. And actually, I gave her daughter, I gave her some of this. I gave her everything. And the daughter's like, but she can't swallow. She can't drink anything. And so we poured some ASEA into a spray bottle, and I said, just spray this on your mom's tongue. And back then, I knew to take the gel, put it on the neck, around the ears, and the feet. And so they did that. And that night, the daughter texted me, and she's like, thank you so much for making these last few moments with my mom so meaningful. She's laughing, we're connecting, and doesn't have a whole lot of discomfort. Still thought that her mom was going to die within a few hours, because that's what all the doctors were saying. But the mom made it through the night. And then I woke up, and I just had in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, she needs this in her belly. And back then, nobody had educated anybody about putting this in the belly. But I had that thought. I texted the daughter that morning. I said, get this all over your mom's belly. They did. That afternoon, the woman gets out of bed, does 2 little laps around the hospital pod. She starts eating. She starts drinking. She hadn't had any food for about 3 weeks. She hadn't had anything to drink in about 1 week. She started eating and drinking that day and walking. And a few days later, she went home from the hospital with a big list of what she expected for her Christmas feast. And in less than 5 months, she was disease-free. So get it on the belly. And here's my last story. This one's a little hard for me to share, but I think it can help people. So here we go. My daughter, when she was, I think, 21, luckily she was home at the time, and she had a headache one evening. And I said, okay, well, get your redox, go to bed. She got her redox, she went to bed, and she decided to take a thermometer with her because she just wanted to see what her fever was. And this is the reason why I will never turn off my phone, ever. I will never turn off my phone, because my phone was off that night. And in the middle of the very, very early morning, I got a text, but my phone was off, so I didn't wake up to get it. But she also sent it to her sister, who's away at college, and to my husband, who was already at work. And then they're trying to contact me, saying, call 911. And this was the text. It was the thermometer, and the fever is 107.2. And if your fever is ever 105.5, they think that's when you cook your brain. Uh, Luckily, like I said, she was at home. She was able to gather the strength to crawl into my room and collapse on my bed holding that thermometer. I see the thermometer, I look at her, and I always have this within feet of me. And so I got out the goo and I put it all over the neck, the ears, the belly, the feet. Remember that. Neck, ears, belly, feet. Belly's the most important. Neck is really accessible. All those are great spots. Cover someone if they need it. And then, so gooped her up, got her into the car, sped off to the hospital. This was during the COVID season. They didn't want to let me in. They wanted to know if I had been to some foreign country or, all the questions. And I was like a mama bear. I was like a football linebacker. I'm like, everybody get out of my way. Got my kid in there. And then when the real doctors saw her, they got into action and they were fantastic. And here's something really special about our company. Like, there were generally about 6 doctors or medical professionals in that room with my daughter and me at all times that day. But I felt like I had a whole army. I felt I had Maureen Hayes on the phone with me, other people reaching out to other doctors. I had doctors throughout the country, even though they're all in different time zones and it's really early for them, they were all chiming in and saying, it was just very collaborative. A doctor in the room would be like, okay, we see this. And my doctors on the phone would be, well, the follow-up question would then be this. And anyway, it was quite a scene. She had fluid on her brain. It looked like a half a grapefruit just sitting on top of her head. And I touched it. It was very smushy. Her heart, lots of fluid around the heart. They did the little test where they have the blips. The blips are supposed to go up. Hers were inverted. They thought she was having a heart attack. Lots of stuff was going on. And they rolled her over, and then they saw the bullseye. They saw, oh, okay, this is from a tick bite. And anyway, she's fine now. It was a couple, and everybody was just like, this saved her life. This saved her life. Jerry White said she didn't even have a seizure. Like, it's just incredible. It's so incredible. And then I'm open to any kind of help that's just going to facilitate healing. So somebody said, you know what, for tick-borne illness, you might consider biomagnetic therapy. So we did. After we got her out of like the scary situation, I basically didn't sleep for days. Just sat by her bed watching her, making sure she was breathing. Every time she would open her mouth just a little bit, I would get some more redox in or a little tiny bit of food. It was something. But when she was able to walk, I got her to a biomagnetic therapist, and she tested her, and she said, oh, this is quite something, and there's a lot of co-infections, and this could take a few years. Probably need to see her every week. I'm like, okay, bring it on. We're just going to do whatever we can do. And went home, continued to give her the redox, and 1 week later, we brought her back, and the biomagnetic therapist said her immune system had 100% cleared all the infections. So even though she had a fever of 107.2, my kid is thriving. She's an amazing athlete. She can do one-handed handstands. She's so much smarter than I am. Going to get a master's in computer engineering from Tufts in a few weeks. Anyway, always have some of this. Have it nearby. Carry it with you. Keep it in your car. Have some by your bed. You never know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. This is great. It can change the trajectory of someone's life. Or if you just want to look prettier or younger, feel younger, there you go. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Live long and prosper. To infinity and beyond. Thanks for joining.